from a manual, and the title of the speech is Serving Moloch. Please welcome Danny Callahan.
I am not a religious man. I do not believe in any of the gods. But yet, I find myself serving an ancient god, the god known as Moloch. And I bet, even though you don't realize it, many of you serve Moloch as well. Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, welcome guests. Tonight, I want to talk about serving Moloch. I will explain who Moloch is, I will explain how we serve him, and I will explain why it's so difficult to stop. Moloch is an ancient and powerful god. He appears in the Old Testament of the Bible, in the Torah, and in a number of other ancient texts. Now Moloch has great powers. In particular, if he supports you in a battle, he can give your side a tremendous advantage. But he extracts an extremely high price for his support. In order to win his support in a battle, you have to sacrifice your living children to be burnt to death in the furnace. So if you were facing a battle, you might think, if I sacrifice my children, I get an advantage in the battle. If I don't sacrifice my children, I'll be taken from them anyway if I lose the battle. So you might think, I'll go ahead, I'll make the sacrifice. But there's a problem, because your opponents in the battle are facing the same choice. So they too decide to sacrifice their children to get an advantage in the battle. But because both sides sacrifice their children, both sides get the support of Moloch, neither side get an advantage in the battle. And then it's impossible to stop, because you know that the other side is sacrificing their children. So if you're going to have any chance at all in the battle, you need to sacrifice yours. And in the end, the outcome of the battle is exactly the same as it would have been anyway. But both sides have sacrificed their children. And everyone can agree that this is a worse outcome than neither side sacrificing their children. But this is serving Moloch. And this is how Moloch wins. Now, serving Moloch is a metaphor for some situations we also face in the modern world. And in order for you to serve Moloch, three things have to be true. You must be facing a situation where there's a course of action available that gives you a relative advantage compared to others. Secondly, that course of action must be available to others as well. And thirdly, if everyone follows that course of action, then the world is worse off than if nobody follows that course of action. So here are some modern examples. First example, imagine a workplace. Everyone works from 9 to 5, all of the work gets done. Then one of the workers starts working from 8 to 6. Doesn't produce any more work, just there an extra 2 hours a day. And maybe, as in many workplaces, the boss finds it hard to work out exactly how much work people are producing. So she thinks this particular worker is working harder. So she gives him a bigger bonus at the expense of the others. And the others, well, they all want a bigger bonus too. So they all start working from 8 to 6 as well. And then because everybody does it, it's now normal. So they all only get a normal size bonus. And then it's impossible to stop, because if any of them go back to 9 to 5, then they'll get an even smaller bonus. So all of these workers are serving Moloch. Second example, imagine two countries. Let's call them North Fredonia and South Fredonia. They're historic enemies, they're at peace now, but they're still a bit suspicious of each other. And let's say neither of them spends very much on their defence. Then one day, North Fredonia thinks, well, if we increase spending on our army now, if South Fredonia ever attacked us, we'd be able to fight them off. But South Fredonia see this and they're a bit alarmed, so they think, oh, we better increase spending on our army. That way, if North Fredonia are planning to attack us, we'll be able to fight them off. And before long, an arms race starts. And eventually, North Fredonia and South Fredonia are pointing nuclear weapons at each other. North Fredonia and South Fredonia are both serving Moloch. Third modern example, booking flights online. When you go onto an airline website to book a flight, you get quoted a price. So you might choose the airline with the cheapest price. But then when you come to pay, it turns out there's a load of hidden extras you can't get out of, like a fuel surcharge, for example, or an extra charge for using your card to pay on the internet. If one airline started including all of these costs in its upfront costs, it would be at a disadvantage because it would look more expensive. It wouldn't get as many bookings. So all of the airlines have an incentive to adopt the sneaky approach. The customers are worse off because they're not being told the true cost up front. The airlines are no better off because they're all doing it, so none of them gets an advantage. These airlines are all serving Moloch. And these are just 3 examples of how we serve Moloch in the modern world, but there are many more around us every day if we should choose to look. Now, serving Moloch is not a conspiracy. He doesn't have actual disciples who are going out into the world to try and manufacture these situations. They just occur. They just occur when the incentives that face us personally encourage us to do something that's against the greater good. Now, the good news is that in some cases, regulation can be brought to bear. In the working hours example, a regulation on the maximum number of working hours can help. In the case of North Fredonia and South Fredonia, they could sign up to an arms control treaty. And in the case of booking flights online, in the UK at least, the Office of Fair Trading has clamped down on the worst examples of airlines quoting misleading prices. But there are still problems because there are still such strong incentives to cheat. When I started my current job, my employer invited me to sign a side contract opting out of the working hours regulations. And guess what? I signed it. Arms control. Well, countries cheat on arms control treaties all the time. And even in the airline example, I booked a flight online a few weeks ago. I came to pay. I was charged an extra £8 for using my card to pay on the internet. Now, the reason I wanted to tell you about this is to try and explain why, in a world full of people, I think, who are good and well-intentioned, people still end up doing bad things that make the world worse. And I got the idea of this, of Serving Moloch, from an excellent blog that I recommend you all read called Slate Star Codex. And serving Moloch is something we all do. It's something that other people do and we can see it, but if we're honest, it's something we do ourselves. We go on serving Moloch. We seek his support in our battles. We make sacrifices to win his favour, and we are all worse off as a result. Mr. Toastmaster.